Ollie Marchon, welcome to the podcast, brother.
It's great to be here, mate.
Mate, how you feeling? You've had a busy couple of days. You got in late last night and also up this morning. How you feeling?
I feel good. I'm first thing in the morning, I'm usually at my best.
Yeah.
I've had a workout this morning. I'm pretty caffeinated, so I feel pretty good. And also, like, an opportunity to meet someone new, I think you always bring a different kind of energy. So,
Well, mate, hey, thanks for having me. We're here in Marchon HQ, which I'm very excited. Even in the lead up to this conversation, I was like, oh, would you potentially have the space we can record it? You're like, yeah, man, just coming to our studio. So, mate, thanks for having us.
it's a pleasure, mate. This makes things a lot easier for me. So it's a nice little purpose-built studio that we've used. And yeah, the people coming to me to podcast means I don't have to break stride in what I usually do. So I always appreciate that.
You were saying this morning that you love your little bubble that you're in here in Harperton. Like, you got your morning, you got the same cafe that you go to. How important is routine at the moment?
I think I'm a creature of habit. I always have been. I think it's maybe the principles that have been born out of that institutionalization around rugby and just like be certain place at certain times, very routine based. Then mine became a PT. It was all about schedules and times. So I've always liked to be in certain places at certain times and build a lifestyle that kind of is conducive with the things that I like to try and do around training, eating, socializing, being home with my family.
Yeah.
Work, as obviously as it's grown, the demands for me to travel have become greater. So, I'm flexible. I'm happy to, to go and travel and, out of necessity. But if I can, walking to a place of work, walking to where I have breakfast, walking to the gym, walking home, I just find that.
Bro, you were saying
enjoyable.
this morning, like, you walk everywhere, except for this morning where you had to pick us up with all with all our equipment, man.
Yeah, it's something I've done. I think for the last 10 years. Like I've always lived and worked within probably a mile radius, and so I've just always had a chance to walk, and it means I can maximize the time when I'm working. Like when I'm walking, I'm just like thinking, I'm being creative, I'm answering things, I'm be able to get back to things. So I use that time really well. And there's the added benefits, being outside. It's not quite so good in the UK when it's raining, but I do try, and like the ignorance in me just sort of like tries to walk in the rain. And often people kind of see me like with a backpack on, an anorak, and I'm getting like pissed on by the rain. They're like, why is this guy still walking? Like he's kind of successful. Like, why doesn't he just get a car and just like drive somewhere?
Yeah. I wonder if people are thinking just like, oh, there must be something in that, like trying to pick apart every little single thing that you do. Is like, there must be something in walking. Like maybe I should just start walking.
I think it's always like that integration of, it's obviously helped me stay in shape as well, right? So like I said, there's a number of benefits, like being outside a little bit more, that early commute to work, like being in daylight, when it is light, going out in the kind of 5:30 a.m. when no one's around, it's quite quiet, I can be at my thoughts, because life for me is super busy, and when people are awake and I'm on, there's not much opportunity just to have some alone time. So walking for me has kind of served that purpose. It's also kept me active. It's increased my step count. I've been able to manage my body weight a little bit better with it. I just enjoy doing it.
Bro, there's so many things that I'm excited to talk about today. Like you mentioned, the transition out of rugby, your family life, or your business, building business. There's so many cool aspects of it. And I think a lot of it I resemble with, because you came out of footy and you've transitioned so well. Like it's really inspiring to see what you've done. And for me, I feel like I've just sort of come out of rugby a couple of years ago. And so I'm like, I feel like I wanted like 10 years earlier. So it's really cool to sit with you and talk through all the little things that you've done. Before we get into that, I kind of want to know what like growing up was like in the Marchon household. Like you said, you've got a brother and a sister. Were you guys always competitive? Did you do a bunch of different sports? Like, what did growing up look like?
In short, yeah, like I always was competitive. I don't think it necessarily came from my siblings. I was the middle child. I was the elder of the two brothers. So like, I kind of, I guess, paved the way in terms of that, my relationship with my brother and maybe who he was inspired by. But I was, disciplined by my father. He was authoritarian. He was from a different culture. He was a surgeon, so he came to this country, to apply his trade as a doctor. And when you're brought up in that culture, he's from a place called Goa, which is in India. A very different culture to the Western culture. And I think it feel as though like people of color have a bit of a chip on their shoulder when they come to this country. Maybe rightly so. Maybe society, means the constructs of society means that they have to kind of act like that. And maybe his like backstory as a kid as well with his parents. So where I'm going with this is like he was always big on discipline. He was always big on education. He was always big on, if I got a 8 out of 10, it was like, why didn't you get a 10 out of 10?
Gotcha.
So the competition was kind of born out of like me knowing that like good was never good enough. Which can be, looking back with hindsight, it's a good thing when you're in it and you're as a kid. Like maybe you can argue that's not the best way to parent a child. But
I was going to say, is that a good perspective to have now, like looking back on it?
I genuinely wouldn't change anything,
Yeah.
and I've got 3 kids of my own now. So you're constantly trying to weigh up, like, how should you parent these kids? Like, how do you give them the freedom to explore and be kids, but also, teach them some of these life skills that they're going to need, particularly in a social construct that looks like it does today.
Yeah.
It was very different back then. But like I said, growing up, I probably would resent a little bit how my dad was towards me. Like, it wasn't like it was loving, but it wasn't like he would never say I love you. He'd never do any of those kind of things. It would never, getting a hug from an old man was never a thing. But his way of, I guess, parenting me, or being a father to me, being a dad, was to set me up for success later in life. And to him, that meant working harder than everyone else, focusing on education, just being super disciplined with everything I did. And yeah, it's still being good stead. When I found sport, I'd played rugby, football, basketball, athletics. When I found sport, that became an outlet to all the traits that he taught me. That became the outlet where I really excelled. I was naturally great at all those things. I didn't like to sit still in a classroom and learn stuff. But if you taught me, I've said this before, but if you taught me, anatomy and physiology, which is something that's very conducive with, obviously, the health and fitness space.
Yeah.
If you taught me in a gym, that you sat me on a chair at a table inside the 4 walls of a gym, and you taught me in a biology class, I would excel inside the gym, because the environment was something that's super important to me, and the person that was the teacher or the coach, whether I respected them and whether I could see myself in them, later in life. That was also quite big.
But how important is that, is like finding your ways to learn, like, because everyone's so individual. Like, we had this conversation with one of the crew in the last couple of days, where it's just like, the way you learn, the way I learn is totally completely different. And so when you throw a kid or a little grommet in a classroom, especially like us, that we're like active kids, like, I'm going to lose my mind. You know what I mean? But if you put me in a gym, or if you put me on a football field and you can show me, like, visually, that's how you learn. So I think, even just for the young kids coming through, or even for people who are just stepping out of high school, knowing that, like, how you learn is just so important, and put yourself in those environments, super important.
Yeah, completely. I think that there's no way around applying yourself. There's no way around, like, being disciplined to try and learn, and to go above and beyond in those early years. But the environment is super important as well, because that's the kind of communication piece between what you're trying to learn, or what you're trying to apply, with the world in which you're trying to learn it, right? And I knew very early on the world in which I would excel. It was always going to be in and around health and fitness. It was always going to be around sport. It was going to be on the playing field. It's going to be in competition. So, much maybe to my dad's kind of despair, because he wanted me to go down the kind of conventional routes of both education and then the careers, like being a doctor, being a lawyer, being X, Y, and Z. Like I said, I took everything he kind of taught me, and I sort of said to him when I became of age, I was like, just let me apply all of those things, and I will excel, but I need to kind of like pave this path. But to bring it back to your question, like, I was always competitive. Like, everything to me is a competition. Whether the person I'm competing against knows it or not. Like, for me, winning is everything. But like, I've certainly learned, and I learned this lesson a long time ago, is just trying to beat the previous version of myself. And while that sounds a bit cliche, part of our brand story here and our kind of slogan is without limits. So it's constantly trying to evolve, move the goalpost, shift the goal, shift the North Star, and make sure that it's journey centric, so that you never actually achieve what it is you're trying to get to.
Did you have much pushback from your old boy when you said you wanted to go down this fitness route?
Yeah. I think, like I said, my dad measured everything on what's your grades, right? So what are your grades in chemistry, maths, English, biology. You couple that with the fact that his brothers were competitive with him in terms of, like, their sons, right? So I've got cousins who are my age, they were educated overseas. So it was always like, when I could hear when my dad would ring his brother, it would be like, how did so-and-so do in this and that? And it was always about those things. So I think once my dad understood that culturally over here, the local rugby club, like in this small, in a community like this, as soon as your son starts getting noticed, he scores a couple of tries, people start talking about him. I think, he would then, he'd come to rugby, he'd spend time in the clubhouse afterwards, he'd chat to the other dads, and you could tell he was very proud that, like, I was beginning to excel more than other kids. I was getting the honours at school, the honours of local club stuff, the honours with county stuff, getting picked up by a professional team. So I think he realised rugby was a thing for me. I think when I left school and pursued rugby as a career, he was a little bit concerned, because, again, to him, the pathway was school, university, career.
Yeah.
And we kind of had this agreement that I would do 1 year as a professional rugby player, and that would be I'd just focus on that for a year. And then in year 2, if that had gone well, then I'd get some, like, night study type evening qualification at university.
Gotcha.
And that was something that was always also offered through the rugby club at the time, which was Saracens. Like, the kind of senior academy players would go on and study alongside their rugby.
Something I am keen to touch on probably a little bit later on is like the building business aspect and even coming into professional sport. But that stuff takes time. Like that doesn't, you talked about your old boy having like be able to see the results, or even just
Yeah.
anyone, friends and family, being able to see the result. But that stuff takes time. Like
Mm.
you don't just step into a professional system and like, well, some people do, but very rarely you step straight in and you're making the, top 7, top 15, whatever the squad is. So it's interesting to see that that's the path that you end up taking with rugby.
Yeah. Uh, it was the path that I thought I was going to take, and
Yeah.
then 9 months into my first contract, I got injured.
Yeah.
So again, it's kind of luck when I look back at it. Like these things, it's kind of divine intervention. These things will happen for a reason. At the time, you don't really see it, but I kind of had this career in life where it was like sport education, because injuries or some sort of intervention has happened or constraint, which means I've had to just divert my efforts. So I've kind of, I guess as an athlete now, and thinking back to a lot of players coming to the end of their career and transitioning out, it's only been one thing. It's been a singular focus, which means they can supersede maybe the level I got to in professional sport,
Yeah.
but then they kind of have to start from somewhere around ground zero in this new thing.
Mm.
Whereas I was able to constantly kind of move the needle with both what I was doing on the pitch and what I was doing outside of it as well, in terms of, both commercially and in terms of my education, and in terms of like what I was interested in as well, like my hobbies,
Yeah.
which was, I think I said this earlier, like it was like a blessing and a curse. Like financially, it set me up really well. I could move from one thing to another without, pay cut or anything like that. But equally, if I think back to why didn't I have a 10, 15-year rugby playing career, talent could be one thing, injuries could be another thing, but also it's because I was regularly throughout that career, it's because I was doing two things at once.
Yeah. How old were you when you went in the pro system?
18, so when I left school. So I got picked up at 14.
Yeah.
And then, it's kind of a academy rugby from 14 to 18, and you sign your first sort of professional contract.
When you were younger, was that always the plan? Like, was that always the big goal when you think about,
It was, I wanted to be a 100-meter sprinter. I wanted to be the next David Beckham.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to be the next Johnny Wilkinson. Like it,
Gotcha.
again, like the schooling that I kind of had, there was always a bias towards a certain sport in that school. And I just applied my hand to it. I played National League basketball for a period of time at like 15, 16. I realized at 5'9", you're never going to be a basketball player.
Hey, you never know, brother. That could work.
I just wanted to be an athlete. Yeah, that tagline of professional sportsman was all I ever wanted. Perhaps too much, right? Because again, which I'm sure we'll probably come on to, that when you attach yourself to a certain title and that title is no longer there, you sometimes then don't realize what it is that I am in the world. So, but that's what it was. At 14, it was very clear that rugby was where I was going to excel.
Yeah.
All I wanted to be was a professional rugby player.
Did anyone have any conversations with you about a plan B or like a second plan A? Like obviously your dad was very heavily in the education space. So these are the conversations that you were having from 14 since you were a young age?
The club was very good when I remember when we signed at 18, there was a group of us that went and did it's called like kind of like an MBQ. It's like a year's college course.
Yeah.
So we would obviously get a lot of spare time when you're a professional athlete. But so we would go and study at the local college, and we all did like our gym instructor qualification. So it meant that we were on that first step of the rung to becoming a personal trainer. And there was maybe half a dozen of us that, like, if we were to do anything outside of rugby, it's like we're just going to be in a gym.
Yeah.
So we took that first qualification. And then, like I say, there was then a pathway, year 2, year 3, as a pro rugby player, you could then go and take a university course at the local university, which was also attached to the Saracens Rugby Club as well. So that was kind of the path I thought I'd take on. It's like, I'm going to be a rugby player. I'll do my education alongside it. Some players don't do their education alongside it because there's maybe not that pressure or desire to. I had a desire to, and I also, I had the pressure, like I said, from mum.
I see both players, like guys who I've played with who did kind of like what we did, studied alongside playing sport, but then other guys are like almost like 100% in. And I don't know which is better. Like, I feel like for me and for other mates, I see them transition out of pro sport a lot easier when they do have something behind them. But then I can also see the guys who are in it sometimes potentially like achieve more or stay in the game longer. I don't know if it's a much for muchness. Like I believe doing stuff outside that you're really passionate about, it might not be a trade or degree or something like that, but something that you really might be building socials, it might be photography, whatever it is, but having something outside of your main thing, I think helps. What do you think?
I think it really helps. I think sometimes it's frowned upon in those kind of professional environments.
Yeah.
Because there's no, like I say, like a college course or a university course, it's fairly controlled. Like the club will know where you're going to be at what sort of time, and they know the outcome over it. If you have too many kind of side hustles or vested interests elsewhere, sometimes there's some grey lines of where you might be at what sort of times, and how that complements your main job as an athlete. But I think you get ample time as an athlete away from rugby.
Mm.
And I think there are extras and, video sessions and recovery protocols and things that you do need to appreciate as an athlete. But there are also other, there's a lot of downtime. And I think if you can use that well, even if it's just a discovery piece
Yeah.
to work out what you're interested in, time away from the pressures and the constraints and the stress of being an athlete.
Yeah.
I think it's super important. And I also think that like the reality now for the game is that the commercial opportunities for 80% of players aren't that great.
Yeah.
And so you can be a professional athlete, but you need something to be able to fall back on when your career is over. And also, if you can start that transition, or if you can start building that thing alongside your rugby career, it's arguably a good place to be. I think my downfall, like I say, was personal training is very laborsome. It's time, it depends on time, it's committed. And it's not always the most relaxing of roles when you're constantly on, you're waking up early, you're going home late, you're on your feet, you're coaching people. It's a fairly it's labor intensive.
I don't know what it's like over here, but back in Australia and probably the US, I see do it really well. But athletes are recognizing that they do have so much influence, like whether that being positive or negative, and they're building their socials, they're building their personal brand alongside that. And a lot of mates who similar ages to me, they know that they're influential. And so when you've got, potentially your football club has certain sponsors and they want to use your IP, whereas the player, they're like, well, I've actually got my own personal sponsors as well. They're actually leaning into that. So I see that it can be super beneficial, especially as you transition out. I guess where I'm angling with that is you spoke previously about doing both at the same time, having professional sport, but then also building, your business and building other things to the side. Can you tell me how you navigated doing them together?
Yeah, sure. Just to pick up on the last point you said there, I do think the rules of the game have changed and the opportunity now for athletes is very different because of social media.
Yeah.
And you're completely right. Those athletes that are willing and able to share story and narrative and build personal brand about the things that they're interested in, by very nature of being a professional athlete, you are the inspiration, you're at the top, you're at the pinnacle, you're at the sharp end of what is aspirational for a lot of young men, women, even corporate people. Like they look to athletes for the routine and the high performing traits that they have.
Yeah.
And so if you can document that, if you can show that, if you can build following, if you can build influence, then the ability to work with brands and that kind of synergy, I think is great. And also, like I say, those traits are very complementary to the corporate world. And so transitioning then out of rugby or going and doing an internship or doing some work experience in the corporate world to see what you might be interested in, that all comes off the back of building that reputation. So I think the increased opportunity now that social media brings is massive for athletes. In terms of like my route with it in a very roundabout way, and try and distill this as quickly as possible. Like I said, rugby was the main thing. You get an injury, it's like what do you do? My injury came very early in my professional career. So I had it 9 months in, I tore my cruciate and my lateral my LCL. So it's about an 18-month out of the game.
18 months?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So again, it probably didn't need to be that long. It's probably a 12-month injury.
Yeah.
But because so my contract was up at the end of that first year. I had a 1-year pro contract. I got this injury 9 months in. So I had 3 months of, rehab, having the best surgeons, having the best physios. But beyond that year, the club weren't going to keep me on because I was only 18, 19 years old, right?
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of players like me at that sort of age that they could bring in. And so keeping me on for another year to rehab me wasn't, in their best interest. The reason it then took 18 months is because I went to university. So you go to university, all of a sudden you've gone from this environment from 14 to 18 when you're around some of the most inspirational athletes in the world. Like you're going into the club and like, fuck. At Saracens at the time, there was like Chris Jack, the All Black, Richard Hill, Andy Farrell, like some amazing professionals. And you've got this way of living where you train, you eat, you recover, you go to the gym, you sleep. You go to university and you're suddenly a fresher in your first year. And if you've been to university, you appreciate like you don't need to be anywhere anytime. You just left all of a sudden you're kind of like an adult. You have this freedom and autonomy to do what you want.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle, the drinking, and everything else isn't necessarily conducive with rehabbing an injury.
Not when you're trying to rehab a knee.
Exactly. And like no one around you understands, what your last year or the last 5 years of your life look like. They were at school and now at uni, and that's like, people can't wait to get to uni to see their fresh stuff. I got there and I was like, fuck, who am I? What do I do? I can't play rugby. So the injury took longer than it needed to, but also I'm in that first year of university where I just didn't enjoy the environment. Year two, I'm back on the field. I was on a scholarship, so I get to start to work with the strength and conditioning coaches. I get this extra support. I'm getting my confidence back. I'm playing again. Year three, I then captained the rugby team, and I kind of got back into loving the game. I was back to my best, if not coming back better. because I could just spend all of my time away from studying at university, just again in an environment where all the strength and conditioning, all the coaching, everything was given to me. It was kind of like a professional environment again.
Yeah.
So I came away from that on the track to being back to my peak physical fitness, but also having an education and a degree. In that final year, the strength conditioning was so transformational for me, getting me back to my best, that I was like, I could really see myself doing this. I really had great rapport with the coach. Again, going back to that communication piece of the people that are teaching you. Like, I knew that coaches were always people that I respected, I looked up to. I knew that everything they were trying to tell me, they were imparting knowledge that was going to better me as a rugby player or an athlete. And I was like, if I wasn't an athlete, I'd love to be that guy that can transform someone's their mindset, their physical capabilities.
Yeah.
And so I was piecing this together. And so when I finished university, there was an opportunity for me to get this, basically do a kind of master's in strength conditioning. So I did that master's. I moved back home, set up a personal training business, went to the local like semi-pro team, started earning a bit of money, training twice a week, playing at the weekend, traveling back up to Nottingham, which is where the university was, 2 days a week, delivering strength and conditioning. So again, I'm back into this like building a business. I'm kind of getting back onto this like rugby train, and I'm also still kind of learning, doing these multiple things at one time, but it all kind of fitted together. 22, 23 years old, get that qualification. And I was like, okay, I'm going to apply what I've learned in professional sport and strength and conditioning, all those principles to mainstream fitness. So in my local gym, I was training people differently. I was the programming, the look and feel.
Do you feel like that was lacking at the time?
Yeah, I think, go back, I'm 37 in a couple of months, all right? I started doing this at 21 years old in the local gym. So 15, 16 years ago, not many people were in the gym. And so you had a lot of people that were in the gym because they knew they should be there. Health and fitness is great. They're trying to do some stuff to build a bit of muscle, get a bit fitter, and they play tennis, 4 times a week. That's not to say that all their gym and the training should look like strength and conditioning for a tennis player, but you can start to bring some parallels between what they're trying to do outside of it and what's in the gym, and also make them healthier and fitter and improve their body composition.
Yeah.
But make them feel a bit more like an athlete. And that's kind of what I started to do. Perhaps sometimes too much. I was trying to train everyone like an athlete, but those principles, and people were training in a way where they're moving differently, they're working harder in sessions, and a lot of people kind of like turning heads going, oh, this looks really cool. So I built a really successful business, doing that alongside playing rugby. Fast track a couple of years. There's an international sevens circuit here, national sevens circuit, played in that circuit. I got invited out to Portugal to trial for the national team in Portugal, because my dad's actually nationality is Portuguese. And then England found out about it, and they were a little bit short over a summer training camp. So they were like, hang on a minute, don't go to Portugal, come down to England. So I started.
Pretty cool, man.
Yeah, it is cool, but it's kind of like, I knew that with Portugal, I could maybe have a 10-year, World Series career and be one of their stars.
Yeah.
I knew with England, there was like Dan Norton at the time. There was a lot of great players. I knew that I would be, I could still go and kick it with those guys, but like there was a lot of competition.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's what I wanted to go and, I wanted to go and prove myself against those guys and get into the England squad. So I went to England, and then off that summer training camp, got selected for the first leg of the series in Dubai. And then the next few years was all about England Sevens. But that personal training business that I'd kind of set up, I just kept going, kept doing it along the side. So if we were in training camp from Sunday through to Thursday with England, on a Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would be PTing.
That's so wild to think, because to think that you're in a professional system, but then you're working, doing so much hours outside of that. And it's not just an hour here or there. I imagine you've got to spend a lot of time on the floor, right?
Yeah, like I say, that was it was my downfall, because again, going back to some of the players that I was competing against then, they weren't doing that.
Yeah.
So the way in which the system was set up back then is in London, we would all come together to a hotel in London, and we'd go into camp. And so you'd be in camp for 6 to 8 weeks or whatever it was, and you'd go into camp on a Sunday night and you leave on a Thursday morning invariably. And then when, one of the legs, so you might go to Dubai, and then from Dubai to South Africa for 3 weeks, and that would be the competition. And then you come back into camp. And so when those players weren't in camp, they were just like chilling, right?
Right.
They were, they're obviously doing their extras and what have you, but it was fairly relaxed for them. I was literally cramming 40 hours of work into 4 days.
Yeah.
And then I'd do it again, which, when you're young and you're in early to mid 20s, you feel as though you're invincible and you can take on the world.
Yeah.
Like I said, I wouldn't change anything, because arguably I wouldn't have the business that I have today. And if the upside was a few more years in professional sport, I don't know whether I'd take that option either.
Tell me about the transition coming out of professional sport into what you're doing now. You mentioned the identity piece before. What did it look like for you?
I think the thing in professional sport is that, like, you can be a great player, you can put all the work in, you can be a great professional, but sometimes a coach might just see things differently to you. You know, you're competing for a small number of contracts, and the level I was at, like I was a good player, and I had the potential, and but I wasn't going to be a superstar. Um, and that, the reality of that was I was at peace with. And I think once I kind of tasted that professional, title that I was always kind of yearning for, but then I could see that, what I'd achieved in fitness and being like a young business owner and what that also gave me, I was like, fuck, that's quite attractive too. And, it was a bit more lucrative, and the reward I was getting from changing people's lives, like that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Picked up a couple of injuries. Like I say, new coach came into the England setup. I wasn't part of his long-term thinking. So I had 6 months left of my contract, a contract that I'd worked for from 14 to 22 to try and get. And I was there for, a few years. I'm like, fuck, a new coach comes in and all of a sudden it's like, it's now out of my control again. But for 6 months, you shut to training, you put everything into it because, I wasn't going to sandbag on training or competing. Like I compete. I want to always put my best foot forward. It was everything my dad taught me to try and do.
Yeah.
But when you're doing it, when you know there's not a reward at the end of it, when you do when it's all in vain, like that's a tough place to be as an athlete. And back then there wasn't as much outlets with sports psychs and people you could go and talk to. And so coming to the end of that kind of England, chapter of my life, I then looked at like what are the opportunities for me in professional rugby. Go and play in the championship. The money's not great. I'm like, fuck, like I'm 26 years old. I'm kind of coming into my prime. I've had a taste of it on a number of occasions. I picked up a couple of injuries. I'm fucking tired now. And maybe I was tired because I was tired of the sport. I'm tired because I've got another job, a full-time job on the side that I'm trying to shoehorn into four days.
Yeah.
But when I finished, I was so burnt out and just like resentful of rugby. I never picked up a ball again for like 4 years.
Really?
Yeah. And this is like genuinely someone that you couldn't take a ball away from me, whether it was a tennis ball or football, from like 4 years old. I would take a rugby ball with me everywhere until 26 years old. Like literally, I would fucking walk. What it's like. You throw a ball against you make a game up of anything. The ball on the wall, whatever it was. And I just didn't pick up a ball. We could go to like a friend's barbecue in the middle of the summer. We'd go to the park and the boys would be kicking a football or throwing a rugby ball. I wouldn't even get up. I just resented it. So I was burnt out from that. And I think whilst I had this other thing, like I said, that was super lucrative and super exciting, this identity piece of going, I'm a professional rugby player, that's all I ever want to be in life. It's like, now I've got this PT business.
Yeah.
I think there's something there because people are paying to come and see me. Like I'm doing really well. I'm earning this money, but like, I didn't know what I was in the world. And a personal again, going back to this career and the stuff that my dad had taught me, what does a career in fitness look like? What does a personal trainer look like at 35, 45, 50 years old? Can I see myself rocking up at 6 a.m. and continually coaching people? There was no one further down the track that I could look at to be like, that's what my life looks like in 5-10 years time. So it's like that kind of unknown. Like in the here and now, it was cool because I'm successful. I can do what I need to try and do, but I didn't know where it was going. And I also like personal training back then wasn't a profession that was well respected. And so I've gone from being this well-respected professional rugby player where you can go into any room and talk about what you've achieved in a high-performing environment and people just get it. So all of a sudden, you work in a gym, you wear like sweatpants and you fucking do bicep curls and you train people. So I think again, looking back, it was just an identity crisis, which I didn't appreciate at the time. And I think for the next 18 months, I just went balls deep on coaching and just again, what had started 6 months prior with that final 6 months in my rugby career, I just slowly was just burning myself out to a point where I eventually capitulated.
What in the gym space?
Yeah, in the gym space. Yeah,
because the thing that sparked my mind just then when you were talking was that you couldn't see what it looked like in 35, and obviously it's something that you still wanted to do. You were rinsing it, trying to make it happen, right? So I guess my question is like, how do you navigate through the uncertainty? Because I imagine there's so many people like, I want to be, in the fitness industry. I want to be on socials. I want to build this business. I want to build this brand. But there's no one that I can see myself like, because it might be completely unknown, right? Because you were in that space.
Yep.
How do you navigate through the uncertainty?
Yeah, and again, I think now it's very different, right? Because people are very public facing. Founders are very public of like how I did this, how you could maybe do it. There's mentors, there's I don't like it, but there's gurus, there's people out there kind of showing you how you do. There's blueprints.
Yeah.
Back then there wasn't. There was a few people doing it.
Yeah.
There's, strength and conditioning coaches were huge in America. You could get 6-figure contracts going into a university, college setup, and you were the guy. But in the UK, there wasn't that. And so I think going back to being a young kid. you have heroes, you have athletes you look up to, you have people you're like, fuck, I want to be like that guy kicking that goal in that
Yeah.
stadium at that time.
Yeah.
When I came at 26, 27 years old, it's slightly different. You're not like a young kid looking at a starry-eyed,
Yeah.
hero, but you're kind of like, what does it look like for me going forward? And I was just uncertain. I didn't really know. And so you do the one thing that you know, which is like, just fucking work hard and see what
Yeah.
happens. And again, the nature of being a personal trainer is people want to train from 6 a.m. through to 9 p.m. People sometimes want to train at the weekend on
Yeah.
a Saturday and a Sunday. And so you just get into this treadmill of like, okay, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Oh, you want to train on Sunday at 4 p.m.? Yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And then eventually you're not training as much. You're not eating well. You're not sleeping well. You're an athlete. You're still trying to train, do all those things, but actually you're running a business now. That's a very different set of skills. It's a very different identity. It requires a different thought process. It requires different experience. So whilst I was kind of like slowly dying a death, like mentally and physically,
Yeah.
through exhaustion, really, in that kind of rugby, that final bit of rugby, in that first 18 months of being maybe 12 months of being a coach. I'm probably extrapolating that out too far. I was trying to beg, steal, and borrow any information I could from anyone that had kind of been there and done it.
Yeah.
And try and formulate a way that I could make a more sustainable business, but also still have the huge impact I want to try and have.
Do you reckon there's certain seasons when you just need to dial in and work hard?
I think everyone has to toe the line.
Yeah.
And I actually, again, whilst I don't promote burnout, I think until you've been through, again, if you're a high performer,
Yeah.
and you want to do something great in the world, and you want to eke out every bit of capability and potential that you as an individual have,
Yeah.
you have to fucking toe the line. And
Yeah.
by very nature of competing and toeing the line in anything, injury is going to happen. The torn hamstring I have right now.
Yeah.
You do that because you put yourself in such situations where things can go wrong.
Yeah.
And in my very first venture into like business for the first 12 months, it just went a little bit wrong. I had to course correct.
Yeah.
And at the time, the warning signs I'd never experienced before, so I didn't know I didn't know that the flashing lights on the fucking dashboard were like, Ollie, you're doing too much. Like, back up a little bit.
You didn't have your Oura ring on.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't have my wearables at the time. I didn't have the tech, didn't have the data.
Yeah.
So that's not available to you. And like I said, I don't want to glorify hard work and the hustle and the grind too much. But I think every high performer that I speak to, whether it's in the world of sport, in the world of business, in the world of entertainment, like, you're a little bit fucked in the head, and you do push yourself to those limits.
That's the conversation I think I have with myself all the time. Like it is literally top of mind, because same thing, like study, trying to build a business that I'm super passionate about with the podcast and everything else, but then also work full time. That's a busy schedule. But then you also think about, like, you've got a partner, you've got friends and family. It's just like, how do you make it all work? And then what I see what you're doing now with Marchon in the supplements, the podcast, the online space, the physical gyms, but then you look so present with your family, with your kids. Like, what do you think, where do you sit with it now? Like, because obviously there is a time to dial in and work hard. Like you mentioned that before. Like, I think we have to toe the line. I agree with you on that. But what are the tips that you've done to help, I guess, like find a necessary balance?
Actually goes back to what you said earlier, where you're like, you're in that transition period a few years out of rugby, and I seem to have cracked it. Again, I'm 10 years now out. Like, I started the gym in 2016. So everyone kind of looks at it like, I'm not suggesting everyone thinks it's an overnight success, but when you're 10 years in, you've built capacity to be able to withstand certain workload. You've built efficiencies because you've got experience and ways in which you've been there and seen that before. This pattern recognition, both for yourself, but also in what you're trying to achieve as well in other people. So you learn to leverage certain situations. But for the first 3-4 years, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your partner, your relationship with if you have kids at the time, and certain other people will suffer, and they did suffer. But again, it depends what you're building for. If someone's building for a lifestyle business where they've got the freedom to do X, Y, and Z, that's a very different set of skills and a very different way to build a company.
Yeah.
If someone's building to create a legacy brand that does X, Y, and Z, has a number of different employees, and has international opportunities, like, again, that's a very different skill set. So there'll be challenges in whatever road you take in business.
Yeah.
But I think it's difficult as well at the very onset to go, okay, I'm reverse engineering from here because this is what I'm building for. But again, you take into consideration what is your natural predisposition as a kid? What is it you wanted to achieve? I wanted to fucking be the very best rugby player that was on the planet. Okay, a number of reasons why I couldn't achieve that. But then going into fitness, I want to create a recognizable world-leading fitness brand. It's going to have to take a lot of sacrifice to get there. in the early days of rugby, women, girlfriends, everything came second to rugby. The rugby ball was I was married to the ball. In business, in the early years, I was married to the game of business. And, you know, and luckily my now wife stuck with me through all that. And in the early years of my first son, I wasn't around as much. Now I'm able to, because I've got the resource to hire the right people, to put the structure in place, and my role has evolved. But you know, you can't jump the steps. You have to go through the shit. Unless, of course, you can raise some capital, you come into a bunch of money, and you can start to put those things in place straight away. But everyone's journey is going to be very different.
I want to touch on building capacity, because I think that's something that's not often spoken about in some circles. Like, I think when we look at someone who we really look up to, you know, they probably didn't have an easy life, right? They probably have all the tools and the traits that we want because they've been through the shit. You know, they've been through the first couple years out and they've dialed in. How do you think we build capacity? Do you think it's a matter of actually just having to be in there and toe the line?
Yeah. Everything sets and reps, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is all kind of cliche words, but it sets and reps. It's progressive overload. It's gradual exposure.
Yeah.
You know, I think one thing I was able to do very, very, very quickly, and you throw in other things, like I quit drinking at 27 years old. I realized that.
You don't drink?
No.
Ever?
I'd say from 27 to 32, 31, 32, I would completely teetotal.
Yeah.
I'd say from 32 now to 37. It's one of the guys that works here at weddings this Friday. I may have a drink. I'll probably drink half a dozen times a year, you know, but I could take it or leave it, to be honest, even on those occasions. So the reason I say that is because quit drinking, which means my Friday nights and Saturday nights are very different. My productivity goes up, my capacity goes up. I'm now working Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So again, that's not necessarily a good thing for a lot of people, but I'm able to gain competitive advantage on all of my competition. I'm able to, like, my output is increasing. I'm practicing the skill of working more and more and more and more. So you can fast track your progress and where you get to just by the sets and reps and your ability to start earlier, work later. That's not for everyone. But once you do that around business, you do it around training, you do it around nutrition, kids come on the way, you start to put things in place that enable you to be a better parent. Then you start to put things in place where you can keep the connection with your partner. Most people can't organize their life around more than one thing, which is, this is my career. I know that this puts food on the table. This is my number one priority. I need to be at work at this point. I go home at this point. And then when they get home, everything else is kind of like, they're on autopilot. I go to the fridge, I eat this thing because it's in the fridge and I just need to eat. Or I go to bed at this time, this is the TV program I watch. This is like my interactions with my kids. There's not as much thought around it because they know that they got to get to bed again and get back to the main priority. And that's kind of where most people live. Yeah. On autopilot in their relationships, their relationship with themselves, the food, their training, and the people around them, their wife or husband and kids. Real high performers have a prioritization, and people talk about balance, but they have an integration of those priorities in a way that they start to speak to each other again. And that's not to say that you can get to every kid's practice between Monday and Friday. Some people might prioritize that way. But now I can go, okay, Monday, Tuesday, I go to kids' practices, I leave work at this time. This is what it means for work, but this is the priority on those days. Yeah. And then it means on Wednesday, Thursday, there's maybe a slight shift in those priorities, and you start to integrate things throughout your week. So what I'm saying here is, it's something I've learned over 10 years of repeatedly doing something, and realizing that these inputs into being a father gave me that outcome. That outcome didn't sit well with me because I missed X, Y, and Z of my first child growing up, and that now manifests in me spotting that he's lacking in this area, or my relationship with him isn't as strong as it is with his mother because she was able to prioritize differently to me. I'm not going to make that same mistake again. So it's like the feedback loops and the learning and the iterative, but we're also humans, so you're not going to get it right all the time, all those things. Yeah. How do you go when you make mistakes? Like, is that something that you'll reflect on when you're going through it? Or is it just a matter of like, you've been through it, yep, let's address it, but let's learn from it and move on? Because if you didn't learn from it, it's like, what the fuck why go through it in the first place? Yeah, again, I think I'm very lucky the people that I surround myself with will call me on certain things. Yeah. Whether it's business partners, people I work with, my wife. So I think that, like, having a very good support network of people that can give you objective feedback on how you are at work, how you are at home, I think that's super important, like, two-way communication. And I think, it's just like, for me, I think probably one of the biggest skill sets is like pattern recognition. So like spotting something and realizing that how can improve it, how can I change it. Yeah. If something's happened again that that was something I don't want to happen or was negative the last time, I can step in and put some sort of like some constraint in or some intervention to ensure that the outcome is different.
Mate, you mentioned the people that you surround yourself with. Kind of leads into a little voice memo question I got from one of our mates.
OM, you mad bastard. How we doing? Mate, this is a two-part question. The first one pertaining to your great team you have around you. With that, what are some key lessons you've learned around curating the right people around you and in your business? And part two, when should we start advertising our joint Bali fitness retreat? You know, it has to happen. Love you, mate. All the best.
What are they great, man? Shawnee McEnroy.
Yeah, what a guy. Again, just we don't want to make this all about Sean, although we should do.
He would love that, man.
But just like what a guy. Like again, the energy that people give off.
Yeah,
like,
man.
He's someone that is like an absolute pleasure to be around, but also couldn't do enough for you. And I think,
Mate.
And he's also a busy guy, right? And he's a high performer. It's like he's got that perfect balance of like savagery, but just like compassion.
Yeah.
He's just a fantastic human. To answer the question, I think, again, going back to that first 18 months of being a personal trainer, what was the one thing I was missing around me that rugby gave me? Teammates. I was isolated. I was by myself. It wasn't the same vibe. Where did I excel in rugby the most? On the pitch, obviously, in the weight room, you know, and in team environments, in strength and conditioning in the weight room, it's like it's kind of very social. You got a program. Maybe the wingers have a different program to the prop, but like you're all kind of training, you're vibrating, you're spotting, you're giving people shit, or you're supporting each other. And I've always excelled in those environments. So I was like, fuck, that's what I'm missing here. Build a team. And then you look at the corporate world. Like, what do most companies have? They've got great teams. They've got great people. So I'm like, okay, that's the thing that's truly missing. Very lucky again that when I started the business, it was my brother and my best mate. All of a sudden, trust, the vibe. You start to build high-performing traits around each other. The culture, the vision, the values. It all starts to come together, and you start to build something that's like, it's really visceral. You can kind of feel it. And then I realized that like that's when you bring more people in, it's a force multiplier.
Yeah.
When you start to share the burden, share the workload, like it's a force multiplier. So the first few hires you kind of make, you're hiring based off, you know, the influence that you have. So maybe it's in your local market. So you're trying to find the talent in your local market. And again, the vibe that you give off attracts a certain type of person. So you bring those people in. And I think as the brand's kind of grown, this goes back to why maybe some athletes now should use social media, is because you can reach way more people and you can show people what you're about. And I think we've been able to show people what we're about. And so we start to attract a different caliber of people. People are willing to relocate, change countries, want to come and work here. But one thing I certainly realized, like I say, in rugby is that it's truly a team sport. Like you can't score the try without everyone playing their part. And one thing I've learned in business is that it's truly a team sport as well. And every hire that I've made, particularly the superstars that we've brought in, it's not only been a force multiplier, like it's completely changed the trajectory of the business. It can change the trajectory of like my mindset, the way I work, the way I operate, the trust I have in people.
Give me an example.
I suppose I want to name every 40 people that work here, right? Because it's just about favorites. But I think about like John, who's our creative director. I brought someone on board who'd been a personal trainer for a number of years, who'd been a gym owner for a number of years, who first contacted me. I went to a gym owners kind of meetup, right? So I walk into this room with Charlie and Alex, the two guys that started my gym, and John's there with his co-founders of his gym, and they're fully branded up in the same tracksuits. They've put lanyards on everyone's table. They've put branded pens on everyone's table. This is like, I don't know, like 8 years ago, right? So this is the first time I've seen like what branding was, and like these physical assets that this guy was like, he's all of a sudden put his branding over this whole room of 100 gym owners. And they're sat there in their fucking matching tracksuits. And it was like, that's what I felt like when I was at the rugby, right? We all rock up with our tracksuits. It's like, we're not doing that. We kind of we don't look as professional as these guys. He looked at what we were doing from a training standpoint. He was like, these guys have nailed training, because we'd taken this principles of strength and conditioning. We'd made this like kind of philosophy around fitness that we saw it. And it was like it was this real inflection of where fitness was kind of going. And he was like, that's really cool. Anyway, we got vibing over a couple of months, and he was like, mate, I think you're really onto something. He was like, I remember him saying, he's like, you're like the Nike of fitness, of training. I was like, fuck, that's
cool compliment, man. Yeah.
I'm looking at his gym, the lighting, the branding, the name, the way in which they showed up on social media. I'm like, yeah, but we're not doing what you're doing in terms of that stuff. He's like, why don't I come down and redo your website? I'll take some photos, get some assets, and I'll give you some stuff that you can use on socials. So he came down, he slept on my sofa, redid my website, put all this stuff together for me, and I was like, fuck, like my brand looks way. All of a sudden, I've got a brand that I'm super proud of. Like inside the four walls, I know what goes on is fucking like it's like world class. But how I bring this to the world, it's kind of a bit haphazard. So he was teaching me this other side of like this, like how we show up, how we brand ourselves, how we communicate who we are as a business visually. Long story short, COVID happened, whatever else, and he was like, I don't know, and we've stayed in contact as friends, and his business partners didn't want to continue with the gym for whatever reason. He was going to rebrand his gym and relaunch it, and I was like, bro, look, I really need someone like you in my business. Like, what would it take for you to work for me? And again, at the time, I was like, this is a big salary for me to put on. It's like another example. I'm hiring someone that's not on the gym floor. For a coach, I know what the return on the investment is. I hire a coach, I can get 60 more clients in, I'm going to make X.
Yeah.
For this guy, it's less tangible. It means he's going to create what the brand visually looks like. We're going to be a bit more sophisticated. We have a better website, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he was like, okay, cool. I'll probably come down like once a month and I'll film all the stuff and I'll just work remotely from Liverpool. He came down for a week and he was like, fuck. He's like, mate, coming down for those few days is like the environment, the gym, the culture, the people. He's like, I need to relocate down here, man. He had a wife, a pregnant wife and a 3-year-old boy. On the drive back to Liverpool, he's ringing his wife. He's like, we need to move to Hoven. And his wife's like, all right, like, sounds like your mind's made up.
Yeah.
Next week, he's looking at places, like moves his whole life down. Comes in, and this was like, I transitioned off the gym floor at this point. So I'm starting to build like a back of house team in the office. So I'm sitting next to him every day and we're designing shit, we're building shit, the clothing, the supplements and everything else. It's like, to bring it back to your question, someone comes down, he sees an environment, he's like, fuck, this is infectious. This is exactly what I want to be a part of. It's just like when I've just spent 2 days at Adidas HQ, you go over there, you're like, fuck, like this is it. This is the culture, this is the environment that we need to try and aspire to be like as a small business. You'll see it when you go into professional sports teams. You just get the rub off certain people. You're like, whatever that magic is, like I need to find myself some of that. So we did our job by showing him who we are to solidify the fact that he made the right decision to not go down the route of opening another gym. He wanted to come work for us. But then he did his job to be like, do you know what? For me to carry out my role as good as I need to, like he was going to get the same paycheck without moving down. It's much cheaper to live in Liverpool than it is down here.
Yeah.
It's much easier for his wife and his kid to be around the grandparents and the familiarity around there. But he's like, do you know what? I'm going to fuck it. I'm going all in on this. And he's the first example of about a dozen people. You met Fran, you've met Lauren. I literally list off a whole heap. It's like, it's an all-in mentality. And it's a two-way thing, right? The vision needs to be big enough from the organization so that everyone that comes in can fit their vision inside it. Who do I want to become? What do I need to achieve financially, professionally, personally?
Yeah.
Can I fit my vision inside this overall vision? That's the job of the founder and the people at the top to make sure this thing's exciting enough. And some people may outgrow the vision, or the vision might outgrow them, and that's absolutely fine. But if you want to attract the best talent, you've got to be able to fit their vision for who they want to become inside that business vision. And like I say, and in these examples, those people have seen something in the brand that they believe is truly transformational for them. And when they've come on board, they've truly transformed the trajectory of the business. And you can ask Sean, right? He knows Fran and Lauren because they came over to Australia with me, and like these people are superstars, not just in their professional working life, but the way in which they make people feel, and the fact that they will go above and beyond. And I think that's the key.
It's like build it and they'll come.
Yeah, I think build it and they'll come. But like, again, I couldn't attract the talent like that now that I was 10 years ago. I'm sure in 5 years' time, it's a new level of people that are coming in. Like, you just have to make sure that, again, in business, some people hit a level and they're comfortable. It's a lifestyle business. It brings me X. I don't want to keep building it.
Yeah.
If you're trying to build something bigger and you want to attract this bigger talent, you want to retain that talent, you have to keep pushing. I have to keep putting the pressure on myself. Like I got in last night at midnight from a flight from Munich. Like, I knew that for me to be my best self today, I know we're going to go train, but I've not been able to train for the last couple of days.
Yeah.
I had to go train it was 4 hours sleep. I had to go do it. Like, you've got to put yourself on toe the line to be the very best version of yourself, to be able to do the podcast, attract the people, like do all that kind of stuff.
Man, it's so interesting. I woke up this morning and I saw your story about getting in at midnight, and I was like, fuck, this guy's going to be like retired. And then I saw you up before me on the bike. And I'm like, this guy just doesn't stop.
Again, I don't, but it's like, this isn't like, oh, I've made a decision to wake up for I've done this, set some reps. I've been here before.
Yeah.
And I know that I could have, not set the alarm and it maybe would have been helpful, but I know that in a couple of weeks, like I will not set the alarm and it'll be what I need. So I've learned how I need to be at what I need to be. I know that the thing for me that I need this morning, I need to start fucking moving again.
Yeah.
I've not been able to train to be my best self for the podcast, for the people around me for the next couple of days. I know what I've got to try and do.
Well, brother, you've been on this morning. Like, even when you came to the coffee shop, like, you're very welcoming. Like, you've got a really good aura about it. Even coming in here, like, everyone's so nice and lovely. Like, I can see the culture that you're building here within the four walls. Like, obviously, like, this is the HQ and this is where, like, a lot of the people are. But even just talking to a couple good friends that with Justin and some guys, it's like, I get that feel. And I guess my question is, like, do you think energy is infectious?
Yeah, 100%. And there's times where I've got it wrong. And again, that's not because like I was a different person, but if you're not doing the things that are going to serve you first. So one of our values here is, it's like how the team is everything, right? And many people perceive that to be like, it's always a team first mentality.
Yeah.
But when we say the team is everything, it's like the team is everything. But in order for the team to be everything, in order for the team to be everything to me, I need to be right for myself first, because how I bring myself into those environments where the team are, that's super important. So there's been times in my business career, those early days, particularly even around my family, aunties and stuff, where I've been like short-tempered, not being as welcoming, because I haven't been able to manage the things that I need to do to serve from a cup that's like, it's full and I can give my best of myself. So again, I think it's a learning process, and I think there's times where I've not necessarily got it wrong. But as you mature and as you realize that like the first impressions actually matter a lot.
Yeah.
And also like I can very easily be interpreted some as a bit of a wanker. Like you look at my social media, it's like this guy's always got his top off, like he must be a loser.
Yeah.
There's no substance, it's very superficial.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might look at me, it's like resting bitch face, like can I approach that guy?
Yeah.
So when you look a certain way, like you've got to like know the fact that perception. You don't want perception to equal reality, because I know what the perception is not what I want people to actually think.
Yeah.
And spending time around people like Justin, spending time around people like Sean, spending time around people who like, what is it that, again, you want to try and learn these characteristics and behaviors and of people. Like try and take something from everything you meet. And when I meet people like that, it's like genuine warmth.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily a naturally warm person, but I know how their warmth has made me feel. I'm like, how do I find my version of that to other people?
You mentioned your values before. Is that something that's top of mind? Like, is that something that you and your team, you personally, but also you and the team sit down and discuss? Like, this is what we want to do. Like, this is the type of people we are. Or is that just naturally integrated from you personally and the people that just naturally come into the business?
I think, again, one thing I learned very early, again, go back to rugby, that you walk into a gym or you walk into a professional environment like that, it's that the values are up on the fucking wall around the gym, right? And it's like, again, I've been indoctrinated into that way of thinking. It's like common language within a team, so that we all know when we say something, what we mean by that thing. There's no ambiguity. Like if we say this is what it means, this is what it means for you, and this is where you go, and this is how you act.
Yeah.
When you see values, when you think about culture, when you think about like when I'm not in the room, and it's like one of my other so if I wasn't in, I wasn't here for 10, 15 minutes, someone else walks in, like, do they come and greet you? They make you feel welcome. They make you feel how I made you feel in the coffee shop. If there's no continuity between that. And so your perception of who Marchon is and what you may have seen online isn't, reality. That would fucking kill me. And so without that common language, without, clearly defined values and what they mean, then you can't have any of that stuff, right? So I think that's super important. It's a collection of words that are very, intimate to the people that are kind of within that organization.
Yeah.
For us, we have three simple things. It's like world-class basics is massive for us. And again, some of these stuff can be very, there's a lot of ambiguity around like what does world-class basics mean? But I think it's very clear to a lot of people. It's like we are what we repeatedly do, and what we repeatedly do are the things that just like, it's the simple things, like sweat the small stuff, just like make sure we are world-class at the simple things, how we greet people, how we show up, how punctual we are, the diligence we put into our work, whatever it may be. Effort is the only currency. Like we're very big on, again, effort. Again, going back to my rugby career, like I was never going to be the superstar, but I was always going to try and be the hardest worker in the room. And that's one thing that I can control. And so if you always put in the effort, and if that's what we measure it on, the result will take care of itself based on our capability, our potential, the environment, whoever our competition were, whatever, like control what we can. And the team being everything, again, going back to like the story of where I excelled first is rugby, and rugby, whilst the game didn't give me much back towards the end, like the game aggregated over the 10, 15 years that I was playing it, has been a huge catalyst for everything we bring into business right now.
Well, it's like, look at this conversation. You're always referring back to rugby in terms of like your values, the hard work, sweating the small stuff, like having the basics dialed in. It's like we've taken so much, because even coming into the conversation, I was like, I wonder what the biggest things you took from rugby, and then even just the last like half an hour of you talking about building a business, incorporating the team, like building the team around you that you want. It's just like there's just so many good takeaways from that, right?
Yeah, I think lived experiences are what makes someone, right? So regardless of like my whatever feelings I have towards rugby and whatever feelings I have towards childhood, whatever else, like those lived experiences are what made you who you are.
Yeah, man.
And obviously, when you gain a level of maturity and perspective and experience and whatever else by your own right, when you're grown up, like there's still loads that you can take from those previous lives that can that can give you more superpowers in the here and now. So my lived experiences were my relationship with my old man, and in sport as a kid, and then rugby. I think the thing that rugby teaches you is preparation, in the 5 days prior to game day. So it's preparation, it's peaking, it's like the routine, it's like how you build, how you visualize your performance, it's how you build consistency, it's how you build high performing habits around time management and nutrition and reflection, video game analysis, looking at your competition. I think sport in general, like if we look at the top performing CEOs now and corporate people, like they're all trying to bring some form of sporting way of sporting mindset and sport culture into their business.
Yeah, mate, from the outside looking in, life looks pretty good at the moment. Like, how is life lately?
Fucking sick, man. Like, again, with every level that you go to, there's new problems. Like whether it's people problems, it's like risk associated with how you deploy capital in the business. We just opened 2 gyms in Bath, and one's going up in 3 weeks in London, Victoria. Like,
we're going to Bath tomorrow.
Oh yeah, of course,
we're going to catch up with
so
Justin
you see it, like that's not cheap, right? So and we're bootstrapped, so everything's kind of been personal investment that we keep putting back in. So again, if I tried to make the investments I'm making now 5 years ago, it probably would have buried me. But now we've done the sets and reps, and we've done our, it's all been like, well thought through that we can do it. But it's still, when you think about the investments, like what could we have done with that money if we weren't investing into gyms? Some stuff is huge. So I think there's bigger risks associated with it. So I guess to answer your question, life is really good because I've got a lot more integration into what I'm doing. Again, I won't use the word balance, but everything's more integrated because of people that we've brought into the business, things that I'm able to delegate, the fact that there is a senior leadership team and then there's management within the business that can carry out certain things, and the fact that I'm more experienced with decision making and the risk that we're taking on.
What do you think's the biggest challenge that's top of mind at the moment
that
you're willing to share?
Yeah, what's the biggest challenge? I mean, so again, I've been fairly, from a business standpoint, being fairly, like, we're about to launch our product into Australia, so
very exciting, mate. Welcome.
It should. I think the stuff actually should land in Australia literally in the matter of days. We're doing the same thing into Dubai, and we're doing the same thing into the US. So one, the investment to launch in those 3 different countries is insane. 2, again, you can't just build it and you can't just launch it there and expect it to happen. So there's competition, there's local market things that are slightly different there, even though we culturally fitness might be the same. There's things that we need to overcome. So that's a concern. We have invested heavily into technology that we own, our training app. The success of the overall business is predicated on some of those numbers being able to be hit. At the moment, like our performance on Meta and Facebook for paid acquisition isn't where we try to be. That's a concern. We opened 2 gyms. Bath's gone super well. Victoria, slightly different. We don't have a Justin at Victoria. I mean, we've got the same caliber of coaches, but we're not necessarily got there's someone who's been homegrown in that city where he's already got a bit of personal influence. So that's also a concern. So there's many concerns. I think we're running essentially 4 business verticals under one brand, and that's sometimes difficult. Again, because the strain on people is a concern. I think I don't think there's necessarily anything that like worries me. There's nothing that worries me because it's all part and parcel of the game. But there's certainly a lot of like there's challenges.
How do you be different in such a saturated market of supplements and gyms and fitness and apparel? Like, how do you be different?
I think brand is the biggest, the biggest. So again, going back to everything we've kind of spoke about, it's like we're at a stage now where we've built a brand.
Yeah.
People know what they're coming to the brand for. Like they
Yeah.
know what the brand stands for. There's story, there's heritage, there's history, and there's enough people from the brand that you get a good understanding of who we are and why we exist. And also, like I say, if the story resonates with you of like what the brand's been built on, then like this is what you're gonna fuck with. I think the other thing is the people. Again, was mentioned like. For Sean to pick up on it right in his own right, he's a successful dude.
Yeah.
24 fucking hours away on a flight, but he knows that I'm surrounded by a bunch of killers.
Yeah.
So other brands don't have those same people. So that's a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
I think the community, we've built that over years. So we train over probably about 5,000 people consistently every month.
Yeah.
That's just like from a training perspective. So when you've got a community that's so bought in, there's a meta impact there because they're telling their friends, they're brand advocates, they're wearing the t-shirt, they're sipping the protein shakes, they're on the app in their gym. So having a community is super important as well because they are extensions of our brand, spokespeople for who we are, and the biggest advocates that we could ever wish to have because they're very proud to to do the training and to drink the shakes. So I think those three things are super important. I think the last thing I think that we heavily over index on is the support and the education, the guidance around it.
Yeah.
We came from as coaches, going back to what I told you about what that S&C coach gave me in my last year of university. Like it was the coaching, it was the mentorship, it was the confidence he gave in me, like to go back out on the field and to try and get back to where I was at 18 years old, like I could take on the world from a physical and mental standpoint. And we try and bring that to social media every day, whether it's through the podcast, through my YouTube, or through everyone else's pages.
Yeah.
Education and the fact that we're going to show up and we'll be there for you.
Yeah.
I think that gives people, just a positive outlook on their own environment and what they can achieve throughout any given 24 hours.
Mate, I was telling you before, like I'm new to following Marchon and your person, Jen.
How dare you?
I know, mate. Well, to be honest, we were laughing about it before because I was telling my mate, Shannon that I trained with, that I was coming over here and who we had on, and I threw your name in amongst a bunch of others, and he's like, fucking catching up with Ollie Marchon. And he reached in, he pulled out his Marchon with supplements. I think it was the protein powder or whatever it was. And I was like, mate, that's so, you would have had to pay like the extra shipping. And actually he's like, mate, I fucking love this stuff. Like, and so he was a fan. So, and then even for even the research coming into here, like talking to Justin and talking to Sean and listening to other podcasts that you've been on, and even watching the documentaries around the ultra that you did last year, your London Marathon, like it's cool to see how you show up as you show up on social media because it just looks so authentic and genuine. Like I saw that, I'm like, man, I really love what you're putting out. It's like I said, it's like infectious, right? It makes you want to be a better person, I think.
I think the social thing's an interesting one. Like I made a commitment to myself. It's like, okay, again, what I like to try and do is understand the rules of the game where I'm trying to play, and then just like play it to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I control. When social media became a thing, the YouTube, the Instagram, whatever, it's like, what are the rules of the game? Okay, post consistently, try and stay authentic, like preach what's truly you're about, connect with as many people as you can, try and add value, try and be entertaining, whatever else. It's like, that's all I just try and do. It's like in some instances, whether on stories or whatever, like I'll probably overshare. I should probably share too much stuff in terms of like, I'm not oversharing in the typical sense. I'm like genuinely posting too much stuff.
Yeah.
But to a large degree, there's not really a strategy for me.
Yeah.
I'm just going to post stuff that that's usually like me showing the people that are around me, like the people piece, me showing what I'm up to in a way that like, this is how I live my life. This is the things that I do that's brought me this level of success.
Yeah.
But I think like storytelling and narrative and the ability to, people just want to be nosy, right? So people have got like a bit of an interest in someone.
Yeah.
The ability to continue that story on different channels, on different platforms, I think is super powerful right now.
But it's also cool how you're doing it, not just in the gym fitness space, but like taking into ultra space. Like you just ran the marathon recently in London. What, like, is that something that you've always been interested in, or is it just a matter of pushing yourself? Like, I guess why keep doing these hard things?
It's such a good question. And when I podcast with other people, I ask the same thing. I'm like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
I think like competition with yourself is a massive one. I think whenever I speak to people in the running space or in ultra endurance space, people are either running away from something like trauma or something's happened, or just running towards something to try and feel something. And for me, it's certainly the latter. Like, I want to know, and yeah, I don't think this is anything new. I want to know when things get super tough and you're fucking staring the fucking wolf in the eyes, like what decision are you going to make? Are you going to quit? Are you going to stop? What's that talk? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? Like, it's cool, right? Because there aren't many situations in life where there's like a real level of controlled violence against yourself,
Yeah.
where you're probably going to be all right. And I think that's super cool. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a warm-blooded male where naturally, like, competition
Yeah.
and physicality and challenging myself has always been what I want to try and do. And I think obviously running is topical and it's been popularized, and maybe for the barriers to entry aren't, that high. You just need to have time on your hands to be able to go and practice these things.
Yeah.
But there's very few things in life where you can put yourself, on the knife edge in a controlled environment and really see what you're made of. And when you get the other side of it, again, what it does for like self-confidence, resilience, your mindset, and how you can apply that into everything you're doing in life. Like, waking up at 4:30 after 4 hours sleep is nothing compared to 7 days on the bounce of trying to run through the mountains.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, those arenas, those competitions, albeit the frequency does matter because you don't want to overcook yourself. You don't want, too much exposure to that shit. But I think that stuff is super important for resiliency and what you can achieve in life.
Where does your head go when you're like in the proper thick of it? Like, I think that 7-day ultra that you did in Switzerland, Germany, and crossing all the countries, like, where does your head go when you're staring down the barrel, like, and it's fucking hard?
I just start cursing at myself.
Let's fucking go.
Yeah, you're just like cursing. So I'm trying to gamify it.
Yeah.
Trying to gamify. I do think, like, again, there is levels to this stuff, right? What does a 100-miler, through mountains look like when it's 24? You're 24 hours in, you've not slept, and that kind of stuff. Like, I think in ultra endurance, there's a lot of differences between multi-stage ones. It's a 1-day thing, it's a couple of days things. Like, so I've not been exposed to all of it. I'm not by any means like an advanced ultra endurance athlete.
Yeah.
But the things in which I have taken on have been adequate challenge, let's say. Like, it's been enough challenge for me to be able to go past it, but also still have that fun moment where you're just fucking cursing at yourself, like you're battling with stopping, you're finding excuses, you're trying to rationalize, justify how you maybe show up on social media once you've DNF'd from this thing. But yeah, for the most part, I've been able to try and get through and get to the other side. And I think that's always, for the sorts of challenges that I want to go and to try and take on, the chances of not completing probably aren't that high. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, I'm not at that stage yet where there's so many different variables that could really stop you. And I take my hats off to the guys that do, because, sometimes in those DNF situations, like, it's a lot of that stuff is, completely out of your control. But I'd say where I'm at, like, it's controlled violence against yourself.
Man, I love that. My favorite thing of that was, the aftermath, like having been through the thick of it and all those little traits and things that you learn on the outside of it, like going through it. Because I think we chronically undersell our potential. Like, we always put, like, not always, but so often than not, we have a ceiling on what we think is possible and capable. But then when you put yourself in a hard situation of running a 270 ultra, you're like, fuck, maybe I can do more of it. And then when you're around other people, like even knocking around with like our mate Benny Seymour, and even Sean to a degree, and Rory Warnock, and even looking at Montana's socials, like, it's like, fuck, we actually are capable of doing these things. And then you go through the thick of it and it's hard, and you're having those thoughts of like, maybe I got to pull out, or maybe my knee is a little bit sore, where it's like, it could just be an excuse. But then you push through it, it's hard, and you get to the other side. It's like, well, where else can I apply this outside into in my whole life, right?
100%. I think obviously a lot of my background in rugby and in the weight room, that can only actually take you so far as well.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us that have maybe gone from rugby background or competing background and started to look at marathons and that kind of stuff, is because it's a very different feeling. But it's and the uncomfortable nature, or the uncertainty around finishing, how you're going to feel, like that slight bit of doubt, means that the discipline that you put into place with your training is very different, because you can often go through the motions with strength training, for example. Yeah, you can get a little bit stronger at our age, maybe, like it becomes super hard. Whereas there's so much untapped potential in endurance, like endurance activity in marathons, ultra marathons, multi-stage, 100Ks, 100 milers, etc. that all require a different game plan.
Mm.
And I think that's the exciting bit. Like there's a challenge there, and you're running to feel something that you're never going to feel anywhere else.
Yeah. Advice to guys who are coming into their 40s, like how do we stay fit? How do we keep that dog in us? Because naturally, like testosterone drops after 30. Like that happens. What are the things that we can do?
Don't stop competing.
Yeah.
I think that again, between 27 and 32, I stopped all competition.
Wow.
Because I was just so tired of it. And like I say, you don't want to be doing 6, 7 things, like one thing every month. That's too much. But like 1 or 2 things each year that scare the fuck out of you.
And you'd consistently do that every year?
Yeah, like over the last few years, like
Yeah.
I'll do 1 or 2 things that like when I say scare the fuck, it's like the lack of preparation will mean that I will like fall apart and I'm going to have egg on my face in a big way.
Yeah.
So I have to prepare. It just keeps you sharp. And I think the natural effects of aging and the natural effects of aging. The 3 things I think that we can make sure we maintain is our ability to move really well. So like again, mobility is going to become more important as we get a little bit older. Lift weights as heavy as you can, as often as you can, and train your heart and lungs as ruthlessly as you can. And that's all you can wish for. Fuel your body with good nutrition, sleep as well as you can. But also like I've met some 40-year-olds who are a few years older than me that are complete savages and make me look like a little puppy dog.
Yeah.
So I think it's a mindset. There are a lot of people out there that are competing harder with themselves, and they're keeping that dog inside them. So keep feeding the dog and keep finding ways to challenge yourself.
But I love that because I've seen a lot of mates who get into a relationship or they might be overworking and it seems like they're losing the dog. And I'm like, mate, let's just do a little run. Like, let's just get out and about. But this is like, oh, I've got this thing with the missus, or I've got this thing. So like, I look at someone like you who about like say balance. We don't say balance out. You say integrating, which I fucking love. Like, I think that's such an awesome way to keep that dog and push it. Because I look at the other side of the spectrum where I see guys who are in their 60s and 70s who are just like kind of where I want to be, like good family guys, really great business, but are still fit. And their fitness obviously looks different to what we're doing. But I was like, mate, you've got everything here. Like you got the money, you got the family, everything's good. Like, why are you still like going for it? And they're like, hey, man, they're like 60. So I still got like a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades left. Like I'm fucking just getting started and they've still got that drive. And I'm like, that shit is infectious, man.
Yeah, I think a couple of things I'll pick up on there. Like one, who I surround myself with. So Jens, who you met, right? Again, we had breakfast together this morning. You realize he's quite similar to me in terms of how he approaches life. Like it's a healthy competition that when we rock up to the gym at 6 a.m., we know the other person's going to be there.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's one thing. It's like doing things with other people that can keep you accountable to the thing that is important to you. I think super important. Training partners, etc.
Yeah.
We signed up to the ultra marathon together. Me, him, my brother, another guy. So it's like you bring other people along the journey, and I think that's super helpful for the motivation to keep going. I think the other thing is that we spoke about balance, we spoke about integration. It's like for me, this is what is life.
Yeah.
Like I never stopped. So when I stopped playing rugby, I carried on training. I'm in the gym. It's just what I do. That's the identity. So now I found who I am. Again, going back to the identity piece, the person I want to become, or what does that look and feel like? Does he go to the gym every day? What does those gym workouts look like? Does he get to his kids' football like that? What is it? So work out who you want to become, and then just go through, apply the program, follow through on the program. And the last thing I'll say is like I've talked about this before. Like without limits is the slogan for a reason. For me, if I think back to those dark days of like identity crisis, post rugby, it's like, oh, this is it now. Like professional rugby's gone. I now just go onto this treadmill of career, and then I retire. Or you change the narrative, and everything is a lens in which you look through in life, right? Like mindset is literally a lens in which you look at how do you approach a certain situation when you see it? What are the things you're thinking about? Without limits for me is like every new phase and new chapter in my life, whether it's in business, whether it's in my physical capability, what I can do in terms of running or whatever else. It's like there is always another level to it. It might look slightly different. I might not be able to deadlift 250 kilos ever again. I never actually did it, but that might not be a realistic goal.
Yeah.
But there is something out there physically, if it's to look at physical challenges that I've never done before, and by trying it, I'm going to unlock levels, and I'm going to improve, and I'm going to get better. And it goes back to 60-year-olds. Like I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
Constantly looking at things, going like, yeah, but maybe if I'm just getting started.
Yeah. Before we wrap things up, I do have one more question. Oh, I don't have a question, but we've got a voice memo.
Hey, all, hope all is good. It's Justin here, and the question I have for you, as someone who's inspired by you continuously, and enjoys being around you, is emotionally, do you feel like there were any specific points in life that made you be a bit more aware around your emotions and how you deal with them and all those things? And if so, what were those moments? What are those things? And how do you see yourself in managing your emotions in today compared to what it was maybe when you were in your young 20s, and what that looks like?
It's a good question, bro.
What a guy.
It's a good
Do you know what?
question.
Whenever people ask me, like, whenever in fact, people ask me about Justin, I naturally just talk about Justin because I've just got so much love for him. I say that he's very emotionally intelligent, but he's also very in tune with his own emotions. And I think that's why he's so endearing on social media, is because he's happy to be vulnerable. He'll cry on camera and all this kind of stuff. But he's very he's at peace with who he is emotionally. I think it's interesting that he asked a question about emotions. There's someone who's fairly emotionless. Look, I think when it comes to again, I think it just comes to recognition and knowing yourself. So in the past, I would react emotionally to a situation, and then those emotions would influence the way in which I acted. So I would be erratic. There wouldn't be any breathing space between feeling the emotion, sitting with my thoughts, and then taking action off the back of it. It was just like emotion, these are my thoughts, act. And that often isn't that's certainly not the best way to go about it. I think acting on impulse, on emotion can be good. It can be a competitive advantage. And if you have a genuine gut feeling that's right, second guessing yourself can sometimes be counterintuitive, and it might end you up in a position or an action that wasn't truly in line with your values. But I think as I've got older, I've realized that my emotion is sometimes down to an interpretation of communication or a such situation that I may have read wrong. And often when you're seeing things now, either email, WhatsApp message, voice message, whatever it may be, you don't know the intention in which it's meant to be delivered. You don't have maybe the full context. You've misread the situation, or the person has delivered it in a way in which you've interpreted it, but you don't know what's got into that situation. So I just think hopefully this is answering the question for Justin and for the listeners. It's the ability to recognize usually how you react to a certain situation. And if you would have acted in a certain way, what was the outcome of those actions? Learn from those mistakes or lessons or learnings, and not just learn from those things, but also just sit with your feelings for a little bit longer and work out how you want to act off the back of it. I think just you certainly mellow a little bit more when you realize that whilst things should still matter to you in the grand scheme of things, what's really important is very different to what you're making all of a sudden this thing that's it'll be a solution, and whether you just need to sit with it for an hour, two, a day, whatever, you'll find the solution. What's really important is the fact that you do good in the world and you look after your loved ones and all that kind of shit. And some of this stuff is actually just quite superficial.
Man, I love that. I think that's a beautiful way to finish, bro. Mate, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man. Come over here and you've showed us the tour. I know we're gonna have a little session, but man, thank you. Not only for giving us your time today, but just the way you're showing up on socials, the way you're just being a role model, not only to the people in your community, but to everyone. So man, I'm really grateful. So thank you, bro.
I appreciate it, man. I'm busy, but this reminds me that sitting down and having good conversations with people that ordinarily your paths might not cross, that we haven't necessarily followed each other's stories up until now, but you take a lot from these interactions. So I can't do them all the time, but for ones like this, when I've had an introduction from someone, I truly enjoy them.
And brother, we'll see you in Australia in a couple of months.
You will indeed.
Mate, Sydney Marathon.
Thanks,
Let's
man.
go, bro. Thank you, brother.